DataGotham, thanks for having me. I'm probably the only art historian here. I don't know, raise your hand if you're an art historian. Okay, I'm the only art historian here. So my name is Matthew Israel. I'm the director of the Art Genome Project at Art.sy. Art.sy is a website for discovering fine art. And the mission of the website is to make all of the world's art accessible to anyone with an internet connection. There we go. Now, the Art Genome Project is Art.sy's search technology. You can think about it as a think tank within Art.sy. It's a source for original, nuanced metadata that's specifically tailored for art search. Now, what do I mean by metadata for art? Well, let's look at this Andy Warhol. It's a Maryland diptych from 1962. It's from the Tate collection. When I talk about this work, I could mention things like it's a painting, it's a diptych, it's an example of pop art, it's a silkscreen. There's lots of images of Marilyn Monroe. It's high contrast, it's repetitive, it's a grid structure. Marilyn Monroe is a glamorous woman, and Andy Warhol was from the United States. So this is all kind of examples of metadata for art, and we call these genes. Now, there's about 500 plus genes in the Art Genome Project. We have various categories for these genes. I'm going to list the major ones off. So we have medium genes, style or movement genes, genes for contemporary tendencies. So these are things that movements of the present time that no one's really named yet, but we're actually taking the time to actually call them tendencies, so make these groupings together for the public. We have concepts, things like identity politics or war or conflict. We have content, iconography, so that's things that you see in a work of art. Let's say modes of transportation, things like that. We talk about techniques, so impasto, silkscreen. Geographical regions, so wherever an artist has lived or worked. And then we have 400 plus additional influence genes, and these map artist influences and art historical influences. So any of you that have ever talked to an artist about their influences, usually they talk about an artist instead of an art historical movement. Now, what's the source of these genes? Really importantly for, I think, in comparison to a lot of what we're talking about today, I use the term scraped because I'm not really familiar with a lot of the verbiage, but it's not from the outside, it's from the inside. So in many ways, it's a panel of experts. We're looking at hundreds of years of art historical scholarship that we're the beneficiaries of. This is also the product of many Art.sy genome team meetings and debates. So we have these meetings on a weekly basis. And then, really importantly, we're not kind of creating this and just kind of subjecting the public to our decree, but we're constantly in communication with our partners, the museums, the nonprofits, the galleries that we work with, and we're constantly using this information to inform our work. So we treat it almost like we're reporters for and looking at the greater discourse of art. Now, the genome is really just a list of terms, but on the other side of it, so the genome process is a two-step process, so that the next step is really applying how these genes really relate to artists and artworks. Now, the result is related art search. Just a few clarifications. Now, just like the creation of this list of genes or these characteristics, it's very much a group effort. It's not just an internal thing, but we're constantly in communication with experts from the field, our partners, scholarship, the contemporary discourse, so magazines, websites, etc. Also, there's a real difference in terms of like an artist genome and an artwork genome. So the way we represent artists on the site is very different from how we represent individual artworks. How many of you are familiar with Pablo Picasso? Okay. How many of you are familiar with 1912 collage work, like a papier-collé, right? You've maybe seen one of those, right? And you know it's very different from Pablo Picasso's later work that looks like Surrealism. Maybe? Maybe? Okay. Well, this is the reason why we have artwork genomes, because when you search for an artist, these are general characteristics about an artist, but you actually can't accommodate for real differences in an artist's practice. Picasso really changed his style. Everybody knows, like blue period, rose period, right? So those are different styles for Picasso. And having different artwork genomes really allows us to create a diversity of experiences for the user. Now, a last point about the genome is that genes are not tags. Tags are binary. Genes actually have strength, so they can range from 0 to 100. The numbers are really not important, but what's really important for a sort of explanation of the genome is that we can establish a strength of relevancy between the term and the artist and the artwork. So that, this was really important for me in getting involved in this project, because the art world is really about nuance, and I was not interested in getting involved in a project that was tagging artwork. Tags don't really have that much nuance, whereas genes really allow for a lot of nuance, and you keep creating this data, and you have more and more inventory, you have more and more artists involved, and you have a really, really sort of kind of nuanced database and nuanced search experience. Now, what does all this look like on the site? So this is an example of our homepage. We're in private beta right now, but we're going to, in the next few months, going to be making the site more and more public. Now, this is what you see on the website right now. So you can browse for artworks, you can filter artworks, you can build a collection. But the central part of the homepage is the search box. And let's say you don't really know that much about art, but let's say you heard about Andy Warhol. And so you type in Andy Warhol, and this is what happens. So you get a list of suggestions. You hit Andy Warhol, because that's the top hit. And then you come to a page for Andy Warhol. You get his nationality. You get the day he was born, the day he died. You can follow him, so you get updates about Andy Warhol. Whenever anything new is added to the site, you're alerted. You get these related genes. So these are genes, characteristics of Andy Warhol's works. You get works by Andy Warhol. And then you scroll down the page, and this is when the genome starts to really work, where you get related artists. So you see James Rosenquist, Tom Wesselmann, Roy Lichtenstein. And let's say you scroll further down the page, you get Lichtenstein, Mel Ramos, and you're like, I really like this Roy Lichtenstein in perfect painting, so let's click on that. And then suddenly you're in this totally new reshuffled experience where you don't have relationships that are built on a similarity search between an artist and an artist, but an artwork and an artist. So the Roy Lichtenstein search is specifically tailored to matches between that artwork and other artworks. So you see we've established something like a most similar. So what are the most similar artworks? You see terms like angular, pop art, primary abstraction, hard-edged, and visually similar, which is basically like a color match. You scroll further down the page, and let's say, I don't know what this is. This is a Juan Miro. Maybe you can pronounce that, maybe not. But you're like, that's a very interesting painting. It's made from a much earlier date, so I'm going to click on that. And so then you get a reshuffled experience that's all related artwork specifically tailored to this Miro work. So in the process, you get these terms that show up: surrealism, biomorphic, automatism, the fantastic, again, visually similar. And let's say you scroll further down the page, and you're looking at terms, and you say, I don't really know anything about surrealism. So you click on surrealism, and it takes you to a page just for surrealism. And now this isn't an artist or artwork search, but this is actually a gene page. So it tells you about surrealism. You can look at surrealist artists. You can filter all surrealist artworks. So basically, this is an illustration of what I think about as a really new pedagogical experience for art history. So you're learning about art, but it's a specifically tailored search, and we're trying to map out the serendipity of learning. You have those teachers that are really good at riffing in a lecture. We're trying to kind of map that through search. So this is just one example of how Art.sy is a new tool for discovering fine art. I encourage you to go to the website, www.art.sy. If you're interested in learning more about the Art Genome Project, we have a Tumblr that talks about kind of like our back end. We're trying to open source our research from an art historical background. And that site is the artgenomeproject.tumblr.com. Thank you.